Hello, everybody. This is Michael Haupt, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the next session in our Purpose Economy Tele-Summit. And today we're going to be in conversation with Aaron Hurst. But before I introduce Aaron, I encourage you to participate by adding your questions and comments into the chat box on the right, so that we can present them to Aaron at the end of the conversation. There'll also be a dedicated post in our forum where we can continue the conversation with Aaron after this conversation is over. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Aaron Hurst, who is the founder of the Taproot Foundation and the CEO of Imperative. Aaron, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today.
No, it's great to be here. I'm really excited for this conversation and really love what you guys do. So honored to be here.
Fabulous. So Aaron is a globally recognized entrepreneur who works to create communities that are empowered to realize their potential. Aaron created Imperative. That's a technology platform that enables people to discover, connect, and act on what gives them purpose at work. Aaron is a close advisor to many global brands, and he's a frequent speaker and writer on the development of the purpose economy. He's also the author of the upcoming book, The Purpose Economy, and that's due to be released about a week from today on April the 2nd. And here to lead the conversation is the founder and CEO of Proudly for Purpose, Magna Rotenbach.
Thank you, Michael. Michael is my co-host for the Tele Summit. He helps thought leaders play even a bigger game, and he's the CEO and co-founder of the Brain Barn, a magical mountain space where marketing, technology, and consciousness meet. And Aaron, thank you so much for availing yourself to explore this exciting new field, the purpose economy. Aaron, in your book, as Michael alluded to, with the same title, you write that most of what we think we know about purpose is wrong. What do you mean by that?
No, it's a great question. And I've realized that myself, I had what sort of understanding what purpose was wrong for a really long time. And we're told a lot through society about what purpose is, but when you actually now, in the last 10 years, look at the research around it, you realize that most of it was wrong. The first misconception is that purpose is about a cause. When people say, I need to find my purpose, they often mean, I need to figure out if I'm interested in education or healthcare or puppies. They think it's about a cause, right? And I talk to a lot of people who are struggling because they haven't found their cause. And they don't realize that purpose and cause are not the same thing. There's a lot of amazing people I've met that have absolutely no cause that they're behind, but have a tremendous amount of purpose in their work, right? And at the same time, I know a lot of people, sadly, who have a lot of causes they care deeply about and have no purpose in their work. So I think we misunderstand that relationship. The second piece is that we often think that purpose is a luxury. It's only for the affluent, right? Purpose is something you can have only once you have a certain amount of money, a certain amount of comfort. And in reality, the opposite is true, that actually it's most often the people who are struggling most in society that actually make purpose more of a priority and tend to have it in their lives. And nothing makes that case better than the classic Viktor Frankl work that he did and his definition of the purpose he had as someone in a concentration camp in the Holocaust, and how it was purpose that got him through the Holocaust, which I think is incredibly powerful. And the third misconception is really that purpose is something that comes to you in a revelation. People think that, like Moses, they're going to get struck by lightning on top of a mountain and suddenly realize their purpose. When in reality, purpose is about the little things on the journey. And we can't just be sitting around to be struck by lightning. We got to find lightning in those little moments every day. So those are sort of the three things that I find most people completely misunderstand about the nature of purpose.
And what did you learn about purpose as you conducted this research for your book? How are you then now defining purpose?
Yeah, so we talked to hundreds of professionals. So every sector, countries around the world, different stages of their career. And what we found purpose was about was really three things. It's your relationships that you have with other people. Relationships are absolutely vital. It's a social beast, purpose. The second is personal growth. we get a tremendous amount of purpose just from growing and stretching and leaning into our fear. That's a huge source of purpose. And the third, and I think most commonly understood form, is around doing something greater than yourself, which doesn't mean you need to cure AIDS or cancer. It could just be helping a coworker or working on a product that's helping people solve a problem. It's these little things around doing something that's about more than yourself that give us a sense of purpose. These are really the three core sources of purpose, if you will.
You're so right, because one could normally think that somebody in an administrative job would not have the same sense of purpose than somebody, for instance, looking to cure cancer or conserving the rainforest. So that is not a true take on what purpose is.
No, that's exactly right. And we tend to think that if someone's a doctor, they have a tremendous amount of purpose, and if you're an administrative assistant, you obviously have none. And actually, that couldn't be further from the truth. And research has shown that basically there are three approaches to work. Some people see work as a job. I work so that I can have a life, so I can do what I want to do outside of work. A third see it as a career, which is about social status, identity, ego. And a third see it as a calling, where work and life are fully integrated, right? And what's interesting is whether it's a doctor or an administrative assistant, they generally break down a third, a third, a third. A third of doctors see work fundamentally as a job. I work as a doctor so I can get a lot of money so I can do the stuff I want to do besides work. A third of doctors see it as I work for status. I like to be respected as a doctor. It makes my family proud of me, etc. And a third truly treat medicine as a calling and really fundamentally don't draw a line between work and life. But the same thing is true of any job, including an administrative assistant, where a third of them roughly feel like it's a job, it pays the bills. A third see it as a critical part of their identity, and a third really fundamentally see it as a calling. And I think that's something that we need to understand, that it's not tied to your profession. It has much more to do with your approach to work, not the work itself.
Definitely so, and as you rightfully said, it's not the same as supporting a cause. Then how can we then discover that purpose and harness purpose in our lives?
Yeah, I think because it's not about a cause. I mean, it's great to get behind a cause, but the key is, I think, to develop that daily practice for everybody to identify the moments that give them purpose every day, right? It's those little moments in relationships. It's those little moments when you're growing or pushing yourself. It's the little moments when you're doing something greater than yourself, and becoming much more self-aware of those and starting to add those more and more into your day until you basically have crafted your job in a different way to boost purpose. And that's really the best way for someone to really approach their career. And when you look at people who are really rich in purpose, and I'm very fortunate to be one of them, it's because I'm like every hour just taking stock of how much purpose there is in my life and my gratitude for it, and finding more ways to do the things that bring me purpose. It becomes like a habitual approach to work.
And different generations, the millennials, and do they all experience purpose in a different way, purpose at work especially?
So this is a really interesting question, because I think we all like to talk about generations as being very different, and we like, in general, talking about people and their differences. But in general, we found purpose is a universal need. Every generation needs it, every society, every culture. I think what we've seen with millennials is two things. One is, right now they're in a moment in their careers, their 20s, many of them, where they're trying to rub up against the world, and they're trying to figure out who they are. So they're much more interested in this topic of this, right? I think the second thing is, with social media, changes in culture, there's much more permission and entitlement around talking about it and demanding purpose. So you're seeing, I think, a very different conversation going on, and that millennials, I think, are the first generation that are really standing up and demanding this of their workplace. I don't think they need it any more necessarily than anyone else, but they feel like they have the permission to make it a priority.
And if we look at your new book, you are alluding to a new economic era that you call the purpose economy. Could you point to the changes taking place that's causing this shift?
Yeah, it's a mix. I mean, what I see going on overall is that the economy evolves over time, just like evolution of an animal, right? We came from apes. Similarly, like economies evolve, and we've gone from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy to an information economy. But information, the thing that we're so all enamored with right now, will not be the last sort of stop in our evolution of the economy. There will be another economic era, and in the book, I really put forward the hypothesis and back up why purpose is that next economy. And to your point, it's driven by a lot of different variables. I think a really big one is this millennial generation and their desire for purpose and ability to articulate that. Another is technology itself. We are now able to do things that weren't possible 10 years ago. We're once again able to figure out ways to have a relationship with our doctor, to be able to make education more one-to-one, to be able to go onto websites like Etsy and buy products from local craftsmen instead of buying just everything mass-produced in China. There's tremendous movement across technology, generations, as well as this incredible set of challenges around the environment and poverty that are inspiring people to want to look for a different way to pursue work. Another one that I personally, as a father, find really important is traditionally, the work women did up until recently at home was never counted in the gross domestic product, right? Because economists were men, and why would they include women's, quote unquote, women's work in the economy, right? Like why would you bother doing that? But now that women are joining the workforce and almost fully integrated, we're having to outsource a lot of that work. We're suddenly having to pay for childcare, to clean the house, to take care of our parents, right? And money's being exchanged. And this is showing up for the first time in the economy in a huge way. Someone once, in the last 10 years, estimated that if you added household work to the economy, it would add 35% to the GDP. None of that was showing up, but now that we're starting to outsource a lot of that work, which is incredibly high-purpose work, it's changing the overall economy. So there's a number of these variables. I could go on for hours about them, but those are some of the big ones.
And how would you define the purpose economy in a nutshell for people who might be hearing this term for the first time?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand it, like in a nutshell, in comparison to the information economy. And the information economy was about the creation and manipulation of information. The purpose economy is fundamentally about generating purpose for people, period. It can be for them as employees, it can be for them as consumers, it can be for them as citizens. But it's about creating purpose and meaning in people's lives. And you see it, as I said earlier, everywhere, from farmers markets to the stores to how we're redesigning work so that people are getting more out of it and aren't just seen as widgets on an assembly line. You see it all around.
And so it is, in a sense, similar, but also different to the information economy. In what ways?
Yeah, it's parallel, right? So just like every economy grows on the last, this one does as well. I think you see it in 3 different areas. One is around internal changes, right? So within companies, inside organizations, you're seeing much less emphasis just on speed and efficiency and data as you look at how to manage a group and control of your team. It's much more about how do we fundamentally bring out the best in coworkers? How do we fundamentally enable them to realize purpose and fulfillment in their work? So that's a fundamental shift from the way like an Amazon runs and the way an Etsy type company runs, is this fundamental different relationship with their employees. So that's one. The second one is really products and services. You see more and more products in this economy being about helping someone not just do, again, something faster and more efficient, but how do you actually build relationships between people? How do you fundamentally help people grow? These are about addressing much more core needs for people around purpose. And the third thing you're really seeing is a real shift in supply chain, where you see companies like Walmart even starting to change where they're sourcing their goods and services to help bring more purpose to their customers and employees as well, to be associated with products that they're proud to be associated with. So those are some of the major changes we see.
And then, of course, if we see all those changes, they also generate a whole new set of opportunities. Can you share some examples of those?
Yeah, this one, it's like so, it's such a hard question to answer because the opportunity is really everything, right? Just like when you went from the industrial economy to information economy, every single business model had to change, right? Even if you were still in the industrial economy, like the big Ford motor companies, the big car companies have had to change in the information economy. So every industry is going to be disrupted as consumers and employees demand this. But some of the particular areas that I find exciting, one is retail. And just the ability for us to cut out the middlemen and go directly to buying things from the producers of products, whether that's buying vegetables directly from a farmer, or it's buying our greeting cards from the person who actually designed them in their home. So right now, if you go to the doctor, typically, you have to sit in a waiting room despite being sick, and you're treated largely like you're on an assembly line as a patient, right? And even 50 years ago, a lot of medicine was based on doctors doing home visits, right? They'd actually come to you when you were sick, which makes sense. Why should you, the one who's sick, have to drag yourself out of bed, go to a room full of sick people, and wait to see a doctor for 30 seconds, right? Technology is once again making it possible where we can start having doctors de facto coming into our home. Same thing with education. It used to be that people were taught in smaller classrooms with much more of a relationship with a teacher. And we now see that we're starting to be able to customize education so people can actually have education at their pace and a real relationship with a teacher. Instead of having one teacher up in front teaching 25 kids, they can have that one-to-one relationship. Finance. Finance used to be based on borrowing money based on social trust. You borrowed money from neighbors. Your local bank lent you money based on your reputation in the community. Now it's all based on like crazy algorithms and credit scores. And there's new innovators that are coming out with finding ways to return to community-based banking, where you can actually start to borrow money based on relationships and starting to actually, again, have money moving around inside a community, not in some like mass abstraction like it is on Wall Street today. So those are some examples of where we see major changes happening.
And with the social media playing its role to a greater extent, I'm sure this would also be driving the purpose economy, and is already starting to do that. What is your experience regarding that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So if you think about the early information economy companies like Hewlett-Packard and IBM, their first products were manufacturing. They were building typewriters and calculators and like very physical products, right? And I think similarly with the purpose economy, some of the first leading pioneers are using technology fundamentally to make this be possible. They're using the information economy to bridge into the purpose economy. So social media is a great example of that. It's based on technology, but the reason it works is the purpose economy. People want to connect with each other. They want to enhance communication. It's meeting a fundamental purpose need. It's just using technology to get there. And this is the way the web's going. At first, the web, when I started in '97, was about take a business, it's offline, put it online. What is the online equivalent of X business? Then it became, in Web 2.0, how do we build networks around the web so that people can gain a higher sense of leverage? And this is where you have LinkedIn's, eBay, et cetera. And now with social media and then with the Web 3.0 in general, it's actually enabling us to go from the masses to once again being able to have one-to-one relationships that are suddenly economically efficient. So we can basically have our cake and eat it too. We can be efficient, but also have real human one-to-one interaction. And that, to me, is that real evolution.
And then also looking at HR and the management of human capital, I'm sure that this is also a field where leaders can maximize purpose for their employees and making them loyal and adding to the well-being of employees.
Absolutely.
Share a bit on that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because HR really is a manifestation of the information economy. It didn't really exist before the information economy. Marketing didn't really exist. Technology didn't exist in companies. So it's really interesting to see how much change is possible as you move from one era to the next. Specifically today, the people I see doing this best are people who are helping employees in their company craft their jobs to maximize purpose. And the job shifts in HR from control to maximization. how do I enable someone to get the most out of what they're doing? And one story that I heard recently was from Erica Karp, who's the CEO of a new company, but was previously an executive at, I think it was UBS. And what she does is very simple, but I think it speaks to the new role of HR. She asks people, did you have a good day today? Pretty simple question, right? But then she, if they say yes, says, well, what was a specific moment that made it a good day? What was it about that day that made it good? And over a couple weeks or months, she starts to work with them to realize what are the things that are actually these little purpose moments that are making their work more fulfilling. And she works with them to start to change their job. It doesn't mean that they don't get the work done that needs to get done as an organization, but she starts to help them craft it around the relationships they have, how they're approaching it, the tasks they're taking on, so that it really is built around who they are as a person, not as a widget. And I think it's this subtle but important difference of like really helping not fit the person to the job, but to co-craft the job as an ongoing journey to maximize purpose for someone. And that's not about like performance management systems and all these systems that are about control. It's about a partnership between an organization and its employees to craft jobs that are about both of their needs.
Aaron, I joined your Imperative platform and was enthused by the way that you coach people to discover their own imperative.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, won't you tell us a bit more about imperative and the purpose behind your purpose economy drive with your company Imperative?
Yeah. So what we want to do, and this is still in the early days, but we're trying to figure out how can we help people understand what drives purpose for them and help them take ownership of that, right? So Imperative, which we launched about a month ago, is helping people take a quick diagnostic that helps them identify the drivers of purpose in their career. It looks at who they should be working with, how they should be working with them, and like why they should be working, like what is their motivation. And it helps them to start to identify the purpose moments that they're likely to have so they can start thinking about proactively crafting their job around it. From there, we're building out a whole platform where people with the same purpose profile, people who share the same who, how, and why, can start working together to basically do peer-to-peer coaching to help each other craft their jobs and embrace purpose in their work. Our goal by the end of the decade is to have 10 million people who signed up on this platform and who are basically putting purpose as a priority and like owning it in their work so that we can fundamentally sort of change the nature of work in society. And that's what we're trying to do. And we have a lot to learn, and we really treat this as sort of the biggest experiment in purpose in history. Trying to get people to work with us as we're all a living lab to figure out how to make work not just work for shareholders, but actually work for those of us doing the work. And that's really what we're focused on. And the results up front have been amazing. I mean, just hearing from people, everything from people reading their purpose pattern and saying, oh my God, I finally like understand why I do what I do, to people saying, I was about to quit my job, but I realized actually I get a tremendous amount of purpose out of what I do, and I need to reevaluate what matters. To folks saying, I'm a consultant, and I realize I need to be picking my clients differently to maximize purpose for myself. It really is a powerful way of thinking about what really matters to you and giving you permission to really act on it. So early days, but really encouraged about that.
Aaron, thanks so much for inspiring purpose at so many levels, and I'm sure that we would be able to also on the Proudly for Purpose platform engage and collaborate to make it move with speed to scale.
It's going to take a lot of people in a lot of different places to make this happen. We're talking about nothing short than changing the world. And that's definitely not done by one person or one organization. I think it has to do with us all standing up and saying, purpose is a priority and we want to help each other. And I think that's going to be a really, really fun journey.
Nothing like a big, hairy, audacious goal. So again, thank you for spending the time with us. And this wraps up our discussion for today.